Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we are looking at something that, well, it initially looks like standard, dense legal paperwork.
Right, the kind of thing most people would just gloss right over.
Exactly. But it actually carries massive implications for anyone who lives, works, or drives in New York.
Huge implications. Glad to be here to break it down with you.
So, to give you a clear overview, the source material we are examining today is the text of a newly proposed New York state law from February 2026. It is Senate Bill 9135, introduced by Senator Cooney. The formal title is the Fraudulent Claims Reduction and Unlawful Deception Act.
Which is quite a mouthful.
It really is. But the legislature has conveniently shortened it to the Fraud Act.
It's a very memorable title, and it reflects a very specific legislative intent, which brings us to our mission for this deep dive.
Right. What are we trying to figure out today?
We want to uncover how New York is aggressively attempting to eliminate staged accidents and insurance fraud, because we're looking at a fundamental shift in how the state handles these crimes.
A total 180.
Yeah. And when you look at this bill alongside the governor's recent proposed initiatives specifically targeting auto fraud, you start to see this highly coordinated multi-branch effort.
They are not messing around.
No, they really aren't. The state is signaling that eliminating fraud is no longer just a criminal justice priority. It is an economic necessity to keep the state affordable for you, the taxpayer.
Okay, let's unpack this, because reading through the text of the bill, the tone is striking. It does not read like a passive regulatory update.
Not at all. It's very aggressive.
Section 2, which covers the legislative findings and intent, points directly at staged construction site accidents and staged motor vehicle collisions. And they're explicitly stating that this specific brand of fraud is completely out of control. It's actively dragging down the state's economy.
To give you some context on why the language is so pointed, we have to look at the historical failure of the existing framework.
Which has been struggling for a while.
Decades, honestly. For decades, the system has treated insurance fraud as an isolated, almost victimless crime against massive corporate entities.
Right, like, oh, the big insurance company can afford it.
Exactly. But the legislature is now explicitly connecting the dots between those individual fraudulent claims and the macroeconomic health of the entire state.
They're looking past the immediate payout.
Yeah, focusing on the systemic ripple effects that eventually hit the consumer.
It functions essentially as a hidden tax.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. When an organized ring stages a slip and fall on a commercial construction site.
Or orchestrates a fender bender to claim, soft tissue damage.
Right. The insurer eventually pays out. But insurers do not simply absorb those losses.
Never.
They socialize them by raising premiums across the board. So when you pay your rent, or pay a toll for infrastructure upkeep, or cover your own auto premium,
you are actively subsidizing that fraudulent activity.
You're paying for their fake fall.
What's fascinating here is how the legislature explicitly connects staged claims to broader systemic issues. In Section 2, the text names those exact economic domino effects.
They call it out directly.
They state that fraudulent claims burden taxpayers and directly undermine the affordability of housing, infrastructure development, and transportation projects.
It's all connected. High insurance costs for construction and auto coverage directly impact the overall cost of public works and your commuter mobility.
Yes. The state is openly acknowledging a really harsh reality here. Rampant fraud makes New York fundamentally less competitive and less affordable compared to neighboring states.
And the bill places a significant amount of the blame on the system itself, which is interesting.
Yeah, they aren't just blaming the criminals.
There is a specific phrase in the legislative findings pointing to the state's current liability and insurance frameworks. It calls out outdated doctrines that create perverse incentives for litigation rather than safety and accountability.
That's a powerful indictment of their own laws. The text suggests the current legal and regulatory environment actively encourages opportunistic lawsuits.
Because it's too easy to make money off of it.
Right. When you have a framework that makes it highly profitable to sue, and you combine that with insurance companies that often find it cheaper to just settle a dubious claim rather than fund a protracted legal defense.
You create a proliferation of staged accidents. It becomes a volume business.
The intent of the Fraud Act is to rewrite that incentive structure entirely. And they are doing that by establishing clear, unavoidable criminal penalties, massive restitution requirements, and very tough enforcement mechanisms.
If redefining the problem is step one, step two is identifying the actual culprits. And this is a massive pivot.
It really changes the game.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because when most people think of a staged accident, they picture the person pretending to be hurt, the literal fall guy.
Right, the guy rolling around on the ground holding his neck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Section 3 of the bill radically expands the legal definition of a person committing fraud.
It's a profound shift in investigative focus. Section 3 amends the penal law to state that a person includes not just the purported injured worker or driver,
But also any firm, association, or corporation.
Most notably, it specifically lists attorneys, physicians, medical professionals, or any other individual who knowingly participates in, facilitates, or furthers the prohibited conduct.
They are targeting the infrastructure.
The whole ecosystem.
The state seems to have realized they cannot arrest their way out of street-level fraud, right? Because there will always be a desperate individual willing to take a fake fall for cash.
Always. There's an endless supply of people willing to take that risk.
So instead, they are going after the white-collar professionals who turn that fake fall into a legitimate-looking insurance payout.
The legislation recognizes that sophisticated insurance fraud requires an ecosystem.
You need a network.
Exactly. You cannot process a fake medical claim without a corrupt medical professional willing to sign a fraudulent diagnostic report.
Right.
And you cannot secure a massive settlement without an attorney willing to knowingly file a lawsuit based on that fabricated evidence.
So by explicitly including these professionals in the definition, the state is starving the operation of its essential choke points.
Yes. If a doctor knows their medical license and their freedom are on the line, the entire pipeline of the fraud ring collapses.
So let's look at the specific crimes this bill creates to dismantle that ecosystem. Sections 4 and 5 introduce brand new sections to the penal law.
Establishing these acts as Class E felonies.
And for context, in New York State, a Class C felony is not a slap on the wrist. It's not a simple fine.
No, we are talking about the potential for real estate prison time. Up to 4 years for a first-time offender.
Let's break down Section 4 first, which adds Section 176.90 to the penal law. This one focuses entirely on construction sites.
Under this section, a person is guilty of a Class E felony if they enter a construction site. And that's broadly defined to include building, repair, demolition, anything related and intentionally stage, cause, fabricate, or simulate an accident.
And the text includes language, making it crystal clear you do not have to be the one taking the fall to catch the felony charge.
Right. The text states the felony applies whether you purport to be the injured worker or if you are the one who directs, hires, requests, encourages, orchestrates, or invites someone else to do it.
Again, going after the higher-ups.
Targeting the project managers, the shady subcontractors, or the organized crime ringleaders who might never actually set foot on the physical construction site.
If you are pulling the strings, you face the exact same Class C felony as the person simulating the injury.
And Section 5 applies that identical logic to the roads.
Right, adding Section 176.95 for auto insurance fraud.
This covers anyone who intentionally causes or stages a motor vehicle collision. But it also casts a wide net over anyone who knowingly submits, assists with, or conspires to submit false claims for a loss.
It specifically mentions claims for medical treatment, repair costs, or wage loss benefits.
There's a really vital detail embedded in this auto fraud section regarding the financial value of the crime.
Big dollar amount.
Yes. The text specifies that where the value of the losses obtained, or even just attempted to be obtained, exceeds $1,500, increased penalties shall apply.
A $1,500 threshold is incredibly low.
It's almost nothing.
In the modern world of auto body repairs and medical billing, $1,500 barely covers a mechanic looking at your bumper and a single initial consultation with a chiropractor.
Exactly.
It seems designed to catch almost every single fabricated claim, rather than just the massive multi-million-dollar scams.
That low threshold is a strategic indicator of the state's aggressive stance. Fraud rings deliberately keep individual claims relatively low.
To avoid suspicion.
Yeah, to fly under the radar of an insurance company's special investigation unit. It is death by 1,000 cuts for the industry.
So by setting the threshold at $1,500, the state is aggressively going after the sheer volume of routine fraud that collectively inflates premiums for every driver in New York.
They want to catch the everyday scams.
So the state has redefined the crime, expanded the net to catch the lawyers and doctors, and set a low threshold to capture the volume players.
Now we need to discuss the punishment.
Which is where this bill truly separates itself from prior legislation. Let's talk about the immediate financial consequences when someone is actually convicted.
Because Section 6, which adds a new Section 412 to the insurance law, is essentially the hammer.
It really is.
Section 412 is arguably the most impactful and structurally aggressive part of the entire legislation.
How so?
Well, it outlines the immediate, severe consequences for anyone convicted under these new felony statutes. It establishes a three-pronged system of financial and civil penalties designed to completely dismantle a convicted individual's financial standing.
Does the text specify if these financial penalties replace traditional sentencing? Or is this compounding on top of potential jail time?
The text uses the phrase, notwithstanding any provision of law, meaning these penalties apply firmly across the board upon conviction.
So it's in addition to whatever prison time or probation a judge hands down for the felony itself.
Exactly. The first prong of Section 412 is restitution. The convicted person must pay back the insurer for any amounts paid as a result of the fraudulent claim.
Okay. Returning stolen funds is standard practice, but the second prong escalates the financial punishment significantly.
It introduces massive civil penalties. A convicted individual can be fined up to $5,000, plus the total amount of the fraudulent claim.
Wait, so it is full restitution, plus a $5,000 penalty, plus a matching fine equal to the amount they attempted to steal?
Yes. You aren't just returning the stolen funds.
Your profit motive is being actively turned into a weapon against your own bank account. You are being financially dismantled.
The financial punishment is designed to be completely ruinous. It effectively bankrupts the fraudster.
So even if they avoid a lengthy prison sentence, they cannot simply return to their business model.
They have no capital left. But the third prong of Section 412 is where the legislation crosses into uncharted territory.
Yeah, while reading through our notes on the sources, we started referring to this third penalty as the nuclear option.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the third penalty is a devastating deterrent. It fundamentally alters a person's ability to exist safely in modern society.
It's intense.
Section 412 states that a convicted individual faces exclusion from receiving benefits under A&I state-regulated insurance policy for a period of up to 2 years post-conviction.
Let's think about the practical reality of what that means. If you live in New York and you are barred from receiving benefits under any state-regulated insurance policy for 2 years,
Your exposure to everyday risk becomes absolute.
you are walking a tightrope without a net.
It means if you are involved in a legitimate severe car accident 6 months after your conviction, you might not receive auto insurance payouts to cover your medical bills or property damage. Depending on the regulatory scope of the specific policies, it could impact homeowners insurance, meaning a house fire leaves you with nothing.
It impacts renters insurance. It removes the foundational safety net that allows people to drive, own property, and operate businesses.
It effectively exiles the convicted person from the protections of modern society.
Yeah.
The state is saying, if you weaponize the insurance system for personal gain, your punishment is having to survive without it entirely.
But a law with incredibly severe penalties on paper is only effective if it is actually enforced. Which brings us to the reporting mandates in the second half of Section 6 and Section 7.
The legislature clearly recognizes that creating strict penalties is insufficient without mandating action from the industry itself.
Right, because historically, insurers have sometimes found it easier to just quietly deny a suspicious claim.
Rather than spend the resources to build a fraud case for law enforcement, yeah.
It's cheaper to just say no and move on.
But the Fraud Act removes that discretion entirely. It directs the Superintendent of Financial Services to promulgate rules requiring insurers to execute 3 specific mandates.
First, insurers must provide timely notice to law enforcement of suspected fraudulent claims. They can no longer sweep it under the rug.
If the data points to fraud, they are legally obligated to ring the alarm.
Second, they must actively cooperate in fraud investigations and prosecutions.
And third, they must report aggregate fraud data annually to the legislature.
So this reporting requirement ensures transparency and guarantees the state maintains a continuous, clear, data-driven picture of the fraud landscape across New York.
The state is also putting real capital behind this effort. Section 7 gives the Superintendent of Financial Services, operating in consultation with the Division of Criminal Justice Services, a tight 180-day window to get these regulations in place.
That is moving fast for a government agency.
Very fast. And more importantly, it explicitly dictates that the Division of Insurance Fraud Units within the state shall receive additional resources to investigate and prosecute these violations.
They are staffing up.
They are funding the specialized investigators required to untangle complex white-collar fraud rings.
It represents a truly holistic strategy. Redefine the crime to capture the ringleaders and the corrupt professionals.
Establish financially devastating penalties.
Mandate that the insurance industry acts as an active tripwire.
And fully fund the specialized units needed to hunt these rings down.
So what does this all mean? Ultimately, this deep dive reveals that New York is drawing a massive line in the sand.
A very clear line.
Between the governor's auto fraud initiatives and the comprehensive text of the Fraud Act, the state is demonstrating a unified, aggressive stance.
They view insurance fraud not merely as an annoyance for private corporations, but as a critical economic threat to you, the taxpayer.
By targeting the ecosystem of doctors and lawyers, and by threatening fraudsters with absolute financial ruin and the total loss of their own insurance safety nets, New York is attempting to forcibly drive down living costs.
And make the state economically competitive again.
Exactly.
This raises an important question, though. It is something to consider regarding the absolute severity of that nuclear option we discussed in Section 412.
The 2-year ban.
Yes. If a convicted individual is legally barred from receiving any state-regulated insurance benefits for up to 2 years, what happens if they suffer a genuine catastrophic accident or a severe illness during that ban?
They have no coverage.
Right. By removing their private insurance safety net as a punishment, the medical bills or the property damage still exist in the real world.
The hospital still needs to be paid.
Exactly. Does the financial burden of their emergency care ultimately just fall back onto the state's public hospital systems and public assistance programs?
Oh, wow.
And if so, does that mean the financial burden of their punishment ultimately falls right back onto the taxpayer anyway?
That is a fascinating tension between enforcing a harsh, necessary deterrent and managing the unintended real-world realities of completely removing someone's social safety net.
It's definitely a complex issue.
It is a massive tension between the desire for absolute accountability and the potential for cascading collateral damage. It is definitely something to keep an eye on as this legislation continues to move forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Senate Bill 913D5. We hope this deep dive gave you a clear understanding of the aggressive new steps being proposed to protect New York's economy and the intense consequences waiting for those who try to exploit the system. Keep asking questions, keep looking at the bigger picture, and we will catch you next time.